Hi everyone, welcome to the weekly update for the week of January 29th. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. I'll try to be as quick and thorough as I can. In this weekly update, we're going to look at a couple things from last week, particularly regarding around your quizzes. Take a look into some items due this week and take a look into the future of what we got coming up down the line on the course schedule. So this last week, the week of January 22nd, we were looking at chapters 5 and 6, focusing on cost allocation and profit analysis. So we had to do quizzes 5 and 6 for chapters 5 and 6, which I'll cover in just a second. We also had homework 1 due. I'm currently working through homework 1 right now and hope to have your individual feedback to you by Friday. So just keep an eye on the Dropbox for that feedback to show up and on your gradebook for your grade to be input here on D2L. Now I'll cover the chapter 5 and 6 quiz after I get through a couple more points that I want to make sure to cover, because there were a couple problems that I want to work through that were missed by a couple people, so I felt it was necessary to work through a few of those. Now when we're looking into this week of January 29th, we are focusing on service line costing and financial planning and budgeting. So we're starting to take a look into chapters 7 and 8. So if you'll scroll over to content and go down to week 3, you'll see those modules listed there. We have chapter 7 in one module, chapter 8 in another submodule, and then our assignments due this week. So looking at chapter 7 as well as chapter 8, just recall if you are to download these PowerPoint lecture notes, there are sound bites embedded in on a couple of the slides that will give you a little supplemental information as to what's being presented in the slide and help add to what you're reading in the textbook. But if you do feel like you need maybe a little bit more in on what we're discussing in these different chapters, for each one of the chapters I went through and put the full length class lecture up. Now this recording will last about anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, because it is an entire course section and a course a day that we spend talking about these different topics. So it will last about between 2 and 3 hours. For this week, there is only one video shared across these two chapters. So I have that listed here in the chapter 7 module, chapter 7 service line costing and chapter 8 financial planning and budgeting. So if you want to watch this video listed here, just recall it's going to last between 2 to 3 hours. And these PowerPoint lecture notes have some sound bites embedded into them that you are able to listen to as well. So watching the video, not required. That's up to your own preference. If you just feel like you need a little extra, or you're having a little bit of difficulty understanding the information, you can watch the lecture here. And also note too, guys, if you're having any difficulties with any of the content, please let me know. If I don't know there's a problem, I don't know how to help you, and I don't, want to think of anybody out there struggling because they're having a difficult time understanding the information. So if you have any questions at all, if you're running into any issues, any difficulties, please let me know, and I'll be happy to do what I can to help. So again, looking at week 3, we have chapter 7 and 8 that we're focusing on this week. We also have 2 quizzes, chapter 7 and 8 quizzes due this week, and another problem set. This is problem set number 1. You can see the Dropbox linked up here in the assignments due this week module. So if you'll scroll up and go to assignments, over to case study, and down to problem set case study, you'll see problem set case study number 1. You can see the questions listed here. This will give you a case scenario to look over, and then you'll have a few questions at the bottom to answer. Now, to go with this case scenario, to answer those questions, you'll need to access the problem set 1 break-even analysis sheet. So these 2 are for problem set 1, and then you can submit it to the appropriate Dropbox. Now, all that is due, the quizzes and this problem set are due this coming Sunday, February 4th at 11:59 p.m. Now, while we're here, let's just take a quick glance at a couple things that I want to make sure you guys are aware of to be on the lookout down on the course calendar before we get into quiz 5 and 6 and to review those. So you can see we're here week of January 29th. We're discussing chapter 7 and 8. Here's our assignments due this week. Next week, the week of February 5th, is when we're going to start getting into those different financial statements that we need to look at. So we're going to start with income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flows, different types of financial statements. We're going to focus this in on chapters 3 and 4. Now, during the week of February 5th, you only have 2 quizzes due that week. And then the following week, you get almost a little reprieve. So during the week of February 12th, your only thing due that week is your project topic, which that's due February 18th, which is a Sunday, at 11:59 p.m. to the Dropbox. Now for this course, if you'll scroll back to course information, if you'll scroll down to assignments, you'll see final project module listed. You'll see all the information that you need to be successful on the project listed within this module. There's a breakout straight from the syllabus that details out what the project is looking for in itself, things that you'll need to be able to submit, and you'll see 2 drop boxes linked here. The first one is your project topic, and the second one is your final paper. We'll not worry about this one right now because it's not due till April 10th. Let's focus in on the project topic. Now these are on a first come, first served basis. So what you'll be doing is taking any topic that is related to healthcare finance and writing on that topic. I want to see your thoughts on a current issue that's happening in healthcare accounting and finance right now, and there are a lot out there. So if you have something you're particularly passionate about, make sure to get that in sooner rather than later. You can go ahead and submit it now if you know what you want to write on. That way you know you can secure your topic. But that is due no later than February 18th. And note the deduction if you do turn it in after that date. So let's go back, take one more look at the course syllabus, and then we'll jump into the quiz and review it. So again, we're here week of January 29th, just looking a couple weeks ahead at the week of February 5th and then the week of February 12th. Then you can see things start to kind of even out here towards the end of the semester. So let's jump into quizzes 5 and 6. So like I said, for chapter 5 and 6, we looked at organizational cost and profit analysis in chapter 5, and we looked at departmental costing and cost allocation in chapter 6. Now, when I went through to do my cursory review of each of the quizzes, as I always do, I look for questions that were missed by more than half the class, pull those up, review them, see if they could be ambiguous in any way or lead to any type of confusion. So there were a couple for chapter 5 and a couple for chapter 6 that I ended up throwing out. So if you had these questions, and not everybody did, but if you did have these questions, I ended up giving you full credit for them, but I wanted to go ahead and work through these examples because you may see this again, and I want to make sure that you're prepared for that. So the first question, this comes from chapter 5. This deals with a new radiology group that's looking to buy a new CT scanner. Now, I know one of the answer choices you can see here is none of the answers is correct, but I assure you one of these is correct, and we do have all the information we need contained within this paragraph to work to solve this problem. So what we need to start doing is setting up our profit and loss statement with the information that we know is available, because what we're ultimately going to be doing is calculating our break even, and we know that because we want to see at what number would both purchases of the scanners be equally profitable. So we're going to look at a break-even analysis, but to first do that, we have to set up this profit and loss statement. So let's look at scan A first. I have that listed right down here. You can see it in this portion I'm highlighting right here. We know profit and loss, we're going to be looking at total revenue, total variable cost, our contribution margin, fixed costs, and our profit. We know that the group overall is giving an estimate that they're going to get a net revenue of $1,500 per scan. Now when we look to the information for scanner A, we see that scanner A is going to have a fixed cost of $1 million, and they're going to have a profit of $500,000 at a volume of 5,000 scans. So that's all the information we need right there to set up the P&L statement for Scan A. Now, how we're going to do that, let's go ahead and fill in the information. So we know the profit, and again, we're right down here in this highlighted part. We know the profit is listed at $500,000. We know the fixed costs are $1 million. We also know that these numbers are based on a volume of $5,000. Given that, we know that the group overall is estimating that no matter what scanner they go through, they're estimating a $1,500 net revenue per scan. So based on the volume of 5,000, which these fixed costs and profit were based on, and knowing that we're going to get $1,500 net revenue per scan, we can go ahead and start to calculate our total revenue, which turns out to be $7.5 million. Now that we have that information, we can start just sort of working backwards to fill in our variable cost and our contribution margin. So the first thing we can do is go ahead and make the assumption of what the contribution margin is, and we know that to be $1.5 million because the contribution margin minus your fixed cost is going to give you your profit. So we can go ahead and put in $1.5 million. And again, you know, a quick check is, does your contribution margin minus your fixed costs equal your profit? And in this case, it does. So the next step we work through is finding out what our total variable costs are. Now we know that our total revenue minus our total variable cost is going to equal our contribution margin. So what we can simply do to solve for this is take our total revenue. We'll go ahead and do an equals. Click in this cell for our total revenue, and we'll subtract from that our contribution margin. So we'll go ahead and put in $1.5 million. That's going to give us a total variable cost of $6 million. Now, if you want to check yourself just to make sure that that is correct, we know, again, revenue minus variable cost is going to equal our contribution margin, so we can do equals our revenue minus our variable cost. We should get 1.5 million. Again, if you subtract 1 million from 1.5 million, you should end at what was listed as the profit of $500,000. Now, we need to take it a couple steps further because we know for our break-even analysis, we need to know what that singular variable cost is. So we are able to take our total variable cost, $6 million, and divide that by 5,000 scans, which is the volume that we've based all these numbers on. And you can see I've started to set this up over here. So what we'll do is take 6 million, go ahead and click on that cell, we'll divide it by 5,000, and that's going to get us a singular total variable cost of $1,200. So we'll go ahead and change that VC to 1,200. Now we can figure out what our contribution margin is. Because revenue minus variable cost is going to equal our contribution margin, so we can know that it's going to be $300. Again, you can multiply all these out to make sure that you come to this same number that you have here in these columns, but everything should equal out. So now we have our P&L statement set up for Scan A. So what we're going to do is go ahead and set up the same thing for Scan B. So for Scan B, let's look at the information. We know we have fixed cost at $800,000. We have a profit of $450,000 at a volume of 5,000 scans. So our volume's not changed here. We're back at 7.5 million. Our profit has decreased to $450,000, but our fixed costs have also decreased to $800,000. So what we'll do is first figure out our contribution margin. And you simply can add 800,000, so we'll go ahead and do that, 800,000. Here, we'll do it in the cell, 800,000 plus our profit. That's going to give us our total contribution margin of 1.25 million. And now that we have this number, we can start to solve for our variable cost. So we'll take 7.5 million. We'll subtract from that 1.25 million. So it'll give us 6.25 million. Again, if you want to check that, just do your revenue minus your variable cost. You can get back to 1.25 million minus 800,000. It's going to give you 450,000. So we know everything's correct here. Time to solve for our variable cost. Again, we're going to take our total variable cost, 6.25 million. We're going to divide that by 5,000, which is our volume that we've based all of our numbers on. You can see I have it set up in this cell. And we have a total variable cost of 1,250, which is going to leave our contribution margin at $250. Now we arrived at that 250 because 1,500 minus 1,250 is 250. So now that we have the information for scan B, we have the information for scan A, we can go ahead and start to set up our break even and see which number of scans is going to make each one of these scanners equally profitable. So let's start with scan A. We know that break even is going to equal your total revenue minus your variable cost times your volume minus your fixed cost, and that's going to give you some level of profit. So for our scan A, let's take our revenue, 7.5 million, put that in the revenue column. What we're going to do here is we're going to take our variable cost, which we said was 1,200 for scan A. We're going to multiply that by 4,000, which ended up being the correct answer for this problem. It's going to give us a number. Let's put our equal sign in there so it'll work the formula for us. Spread that out a little. And then take our fixed costs of 1 million. So we've got all of our numbers set up to figure out our break even. So what we'll do is simply do 7.5 minus our total variable with the new volume of 4,000 minus 1 million, our fixed cost. So that's going to give us 1.7. Now that's for scan A. We'll go ahead and label it. Now for scan B, we'll simply do the same thing. We're going to take our revenue. We're going to calculate out our new cost with our new variable cost multiplied by our new volume of 4,000. Go ahead and get that number. Then we'll grab our fixed cost of 800,000. And in this cell, we'll go ahead and calculate all that out. So we'll take 7.5 million minus our new variable cost with the new volume, and then our 800,000 fixed costs. That's also going to give us 1.7 million. So at a volume of 4,000 scans, each scanner, even though they have different fixed costs, they have different profit levels. At 4,000 scans, each one of these scanners are going to be equally profitable. So I hope that helps to explain that just a little bit better on how to think through that. Like I said, all the information is given. It's just you have to know the formulas and then start plugging in the numbers and kind of work backwards. So the next question for Chapter 5, this was a true or false question. I ended up getting rid of this one as well. But this was cost remain constant on a per basis unit. And asking about semi-fixed costs. Now this, like I said, this one ended up being false. And we covered semi-fixed costs starting on page 195 in the text. So if you missed this one, it was missed by quite a majority of the students, so I went and threw this one out. But if you want to go back and review semi-fixed costs, go back to page 195 in the text and you'll be able to give a good review of that. Now, as we move into Chapter 6, there were 2 questions that I got rid of from Chapter 6. So if these questions look familiar, you should have got points back for these. If you didn't, please let me know. The first one is looking at which of the following cost drivers is the most effective for allocating housekeeping costs to patient service departments. And the correct answer for this question is the number of hours of housekeeping services consumed by each department. Now, we covered cost drivers and cost allocation on page 204 rather through 205 in the text. So if you'll go back and give a good review to 204 and 205 and read up on cost drivers, that'll help explain this question just a little bit more. And the last question that we are going to look at is from Chapter 6 as well, and this concerned direct cost allocation methods. So what the question is asking here, we have this clinic who has 2 patient service departments. We can see that medicine and surgery. They also have some other support departments, housekeeping, administration, financial services. And they give us this table of data listed here with all the direct costs, the square feet, the number of employees. The clinic has went through and determined that the cost driver for housekeeping in this particular scenario is going to be square feet, and the cost driver for admin and financial is going to be number of employees. So when we look at using the direct method of cost allocation, what's going to be our allocation rate for housekeeping costs? And we're going to round that up to the nearest cent. So what we need to do first is pull the direct costs that are listed for each of the departments that are not support departments. These are patient service departments. So we have medicine at $1 million. We'll go ahead and put that in. We have surgery at $1.5 million. Go ahead and switch those over to dollars. But since we know that our cost driver is also going to look at square feet, we need to go ahead and pull those as well. So the first one for medicine is $53,000, and then the next one for surgery is $40,000. Go ahead and put a comma in there. So we know after that, we can go ahead and put the employee number in, but we won't have to really use that information in this particular scenario. So the next thing that we'll need to do is go and look at the amount of direct costs that's going to be allocated out from housekeeping, because remember, we're being asked what's the approximate allocation rate for housekeeping costs. So housekeeping has a direct cost of $200,000. Go ahead and put that in. Now what we need to do, since we're looking at square feet, we're going to add together the square footage of what needs to be allocated out, or what's going to share the cost. Let's go in and fix that formula real quick. I must have had a mistype. So we're going to do equals the sum of this square footage here. We're going to get 93,000 square foot in total that we're going to be allocating the cost across to. Now what we'll need to do, sorry, this should be 200,000. Now what we need to do is take the amount that needs to be allocated out, which is our 200,000. Go ahead and click there. We're simply going to divide that by the square footage that we're going to be spreading that out amongst. So that'll be the 93,000 square foot. So we come to an allocation rate of $2.15, which rounded up is the correct answer for that particular question. So I hope this was able to help you walk through how to solve a couple of these problems. But again, if you guys are experiencing any issues, please let me know. I'm more than happy to meet with you, talk with you on the phone, meet with you in my office, have a Skype conversation with you to help you understand the material a little better. Please reach out to me and let me know if you're experiencing any difficulties, or if you have any questions in particular about any of the homework assignments. I know there were some questions about putting answers on different tabs, and just to address that question, that's really for ease of grading, so that I'm able to get through the homework at a quicker pace, so that I can get you answers and feedback quicker. So it's much easier for me to go through and look for the answers if they're on different tabs. That was just one issue that I had come up over last week. But if there are others, please let me know. Guys, I know this was a little bit lengthy for a weekly update, but hopefully it was able to explain a couple issues that some people were encountering last week. If there are more, please let me know, and I hope everyone has a great week.